Joining us now from Beijing is current affairs commentator Victor Gao. Victor, thanks for joining us. So how will defense cooperation complement China's ongoing ventures in Africa? And then how does Africa benefit security-wise?
I would say China-African country military and security cooperation has a very long history. For many African countries, even as early as during their fight for independence, China provided military support for them, providing arms and training, for example. And ever since they have achieved their independence, China and these African countries have kept a very close cooperation in defense, military, and the security sector. In more recent years, I think there has been major progress in the security and defense cooperation between China and many African countries. Chinese military academy helped many African countries in training their middle rank and senior military officers. And China has supplied the military weapons to many African countries for their national defense. And I would say that this defense or security cooperation 2 weeks, for example, which is a major event in China, has attracted many African countries in a more systematic way, so that it's no longer China versus another African country. It's China versus African countries as a whole. And this would help further upgrade the security and defense cooperation between China and these African countries. And I learned that military officers from many of these African countries in both the Army, Air Force, and Navy are gathered here in China to talk to their Chinese counterpart for how China and these African countries can further upgrade their security and defense cooperation in the coming years. Because these countries and China are now faced with new opportunities and challenges, and how to better improve and further strengthen their cooperation is a major challenge for both sides.
And Victor, we know that China has a lot of investment across Africa. China's first overseas military base is in Djibouti. Talk to us about some of the geopolitical issues happening surrounding that. And secondly, could we see more Chinese bases in Africa in the future?
Yes, indeed. I think over the past several decades, China has been the spearhead force in reinvigorating Africa and in bringing a huge amount of investments, especially in infrastructure and connectivity, into Africa. Yes, indeed, China now has its first overseas military base in Djibouti, which is running very well. And I would say, given China's increasing economic and trading interest throughout the world, I personally would not be surprised if China will eventually line up another military base somewhere probably along the western coast of Africa in the near future. And whether China will also do similar things in other parts of the world, we need to wait and see. And I would say even when China has these military bases, for example, in Djibouti, it's very much used for defense purposes. In Djibouti, in particular, it's very much meant for coordinating the Chinese naval patrol activities in waters offshore from Somalia, which is vested by the piracy activities. And the Chinese military presence will be further expanded to make sure that China is a force for peace and stability in many parts of the world, contributing to fighting against piracy, terrorism, and other evil forces in many parts of the world.
All right, Victor Gao, always great to hear from you. Thanks for joining us from Beijing.
Thank you.